Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 393, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, July 18th, 2025. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I hope you've had a great week here in Charleston or wherever you are listening from, and I hope you have an amazing weekend ahead. You already know what I'm going to say. If you need plans, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar and see what is going on this weekend and beyond. Before we dive into the news, I did something fun. Hooray! It's been a while since I've done something to report on. I went to the movies and saw the new Superman movie. I'll just give a little quick kind of synopsis of what I thought without getting, not a deep dive, no spoilers, nothing like that. If you're a superhero movie fan, you're going to like it. I think it was good. It was a solid movie. I wouldn't say this is you must rush out and go see this, especially if you're not a fan of this genre. But if you like it, and of course, seeing superhero movies, not unlike, say an action movie or something, they're just, they're a lot of fun to see in the theater. It just feels bigger. The sound is louder than it would usually. I mean, I know some people have some pretty amazing home setups now. So, yeah, it was fun. I thought they did a good job. Casting was good. Um, the whole DC universe has been kind of hit or miss over the last 10 plus years or so. I think this is a nice reboot of the Superman franchise. We'll see what happens going forward. I'm more of a Marvel fan. And of course that makes sense. They've just been more successful and they've done a better job with their movies and things. But I've always just liked those characters better than some of the DC ones, but they brought out some interesting side characters. That's not a spoiler; you can see it in the previews and stuff. And that was interesting. I thought they did a pretty good job. And the director is James Gunn, who's done. He did one of the Suicide Squad movies as well as the Guardians of the Galaxy movies with Marvel, and you could definitely see some of his kind of like trademarks and things in there. So anyway, good movie. I enjoyed it. Again, if you're into that kind of type of movie, or you're not like just adamantly opposed to it, I think you'll enjoy it. Go check it out. It's a kind of a classic kind of summer movie situation, right? Like, oh, big blockbuster. It's July. It just feels like a summer movie kind of thing. So go check it out if you were so inclined. I did enjoy it. I do have my family coming in. I am excited about that. They'll be arriving throughout the weekend, and excited to see what we end up doing. Especially having my niece and nephew here, it'll be fun to see what what they want to do. So we'll certainly, once if we do anything fun, I'll be sure to report back on future podcasts. But other than that, nothing else going on in my personal life. Just getting ready for the fam to visit and looking forward to the weekend with them and however long they're going to be staying. So I hope you all have a great weekend ahead. But before you really get into the weekend, you got to get started here with me and the latest news. 5 years after voting unanimously to remove the John C. Calhoun Memorial that used to sit high atop Marion Square, the Charleston City Council has approved a legal settlement that will transfer ownership of the statue to descendants of the 19th century senator and vice president of the United States. So there's this new nonprofit that was created. It's named the Calhoun Monument Preservation Society. It's going to take ownership of the statue as a result of this settlement. It's been a years-long lawsuit that was brought by this group called the American Heritage Association, which, as far as I can tell, is kind of just one dude. I'm sure he has supporters, obviously, behind him and people helping. But basically, his gripe and the people who associate with him in this association. Sorry to say associate with this association, but they basically, their whole thing is, we want any statues or things that have been removed, we want them to be returned, if not to where they were originally, put somewhere in public. And if you don't want to do it, talking to the city or whoever, is behind things getting removed, we'll do it. And that's kind of what they're saying with the Calhoun Monument. And yes, if you couldn't tell from the name and the fight they're putting up, this is all about, because what it comes down to, the statues and monuments and markers that tend to get removed are the ones that were glorifying these horrific people from our past without one mentioning that past, and not even providing any kind of context of why this might have been erected at the time it was, and it's so on and so forth. We've had this discussion, you've heard it other places, but that's essentially what this group is. They want a lot of, like, say, the Confederates or people associated with slavery in this country. They want them to still be celebrated and honored with these, monuments and things that were put up. So sounds like a super fun group of people. So yes, the lawsuit was brought by that group. It was against the city of Charleston, but they also filed it on behalf of the descendants of Calhoun. Now, if John C. Calhoun was my descendant, okay, kind of a fun little trivia fact, I guess, but I wouldn't be super proud of it. Yeah, sure, he was the vice president of the United States. Not a lot of people can say they're related to one, but knowing his background and the type of person he was, I don't know if that's something I'd necessarily be advertising. But to each their own. And if someone was going to get this dumb statue, I'm glad it's the descendants of Calhoun. Hey, that's your person. You can claim them if you want. We don't have to claim them as a city. You're welcome to do whatever you want. It's your family. You can take the statue. So, I know there's this nonprofit behind it, and there'll be others aside from the descendants. But if you were going to give it to someone, those would be the people who do it. Again, you can claim them. He's your folk, not ours. Now, the settlement reportedly allows the statue, which, of course, descendants are saying it's of historical importance. And again, to them, that may be the case, to be displayed somewhere other than the city limits of Charleston. And I think that's probably a good idea. For those who don't know Calhoun's background at this point, besides, the highlights, like I just said, he was a senator, vice president of the United States, but he was a pretty ardent, not pretty, he was an ardent defender of slavery. He argued that it was a quote unquote positive good for the South. So obviously not, I mean, just that alone is pretty bad. And that's why there was such an uproar several years ago. Like, why do we have this massive, in terms of height? I think it was like 100 feet in the air. Like, why do we have this statue prominently displayed, in Marion Square, kind of in the heart of downtown where King Street is, and we have tourists and stuff? And why are we celebrating this person, especially because there's zero context to, that side of him? So, anyway, it is now settled. It's going to pop up somewhere at some point. I don't quite understand why you would settle a lawsuit. I hope the city didn't pay anything. But like I said, if the statue is going to go somewhere, that's fine. Give it to the descendants. They can do what they want with it. Another update. Remember when we had all those escaped monkeys running around in Yemassee, South Carolina? I know that was this year, right? Was it? Everything just kind of blends together. But when those monkeys got out and they were all recovered and they were all found on the property, they didn't really get outside the property of this Alpha Genesis Primate Research Center is the name of the facility. And when that happened, other reports started to come out about what exactly they do at this facility, some other incidents that have happened in the past, including monkeys getting out before, but also some deaths of some of those primates. So we have an update on that story. It's essentially what equates to a slap on the wrist, but nonetheless, the U.S. Department of Agriculture recently issued an official warning, whatever, take that for whatever that means, to the Alpha Genesis Primate Research Center in Yemassee. They did so earlier this month, and this was related to a December 2024 inspection report that alleged the biomedical research company, quote, failed to safely provide heat to non-human primates, end quote, resulting in the deaths of 22 monkeys. So that was not the monkeys escaping thing, obviously. That had happened last year. I just had to go look it up. Sorry, it was last year when over 40 of these monkeys escaped in its Beaufort County facility. But this is reported to this warning isn't related to that. It's solely for those deaths that occurred. So the report from the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services, this inspection was authored by the USDA veterinary medical officer named Carla Thomas, and that happened on December 12th. And it states that on the night of November 22nd, 2024, an Alpha Genesis team member conducting routine evening rounds discovered animals, quote, down in a field cage, end quote. Additional employees were called in, and 32 of the 54 impacted monkeys were saved, but 22 did die. Necropsy findings in the deceased monkeys were consistent with exposure to carbon monoxide gas, according to the USDA's findings. So basically, there was a failure with this equipment, and carbon monoxide leaked out, and it ended up killing 22 monkeys. Others obviously were suffering but survived, were brought back to health. And it was a very sad and shocking thing to hear. And then you also hear about they've had multiple escapes and things in the past as well. So it's good that the feds came out and said something finally about this facility. And all right, cool. You gave an official warning, whatever that means. I feel like it's like they got written up basically. So, hey, bad job. We're going to keep an eye on you. Further write ups could lead to fines and issues. So, basically, like I said, a slap on the wrist, but at least it's something. So, if things continue, there's now an official record with the federal government about what is occurring at that facility. All right, let's go into the weekend with some good news. I know some, it's just how news is. A lot of time it's like doom and gloom, and it's not always fun. And I'm sorry about that. I wish I could always be like, everything's the best. But they're just, sometimes these things happen and everyone's talking about them. But there are good things out there. There are still good stories. And I will say, if you go to holycitycenter.com, the majority of it, what you see on the website itself, is those fun things: restaurant openings, concerts coming to town, interviews with people, etc. And this podcast is more where I can expand upon the other types of news that happens here, which, I do share other media, sources in town, whether it's TV, newspaper, etc. I share those links on social media to their stories because they can cover things that I just can't. And they're professionals and they should handle certain pieces of information and stories, and I cannot. And so this is a place where we can talk about those things. But unfortunately, a lot of those things are things like politics or crime and things like that. But I try to get in these good news things when I can. And this is a kind of a fun one. The Emmy nominations came out earlier this week, and there's some Charleston ties, which is always a lot of fun. The first is The Righteous Gemstones, the HBO show that was created and stars Danny McBride alongside some amazing actors like John Goodman, Edie Patterson, and Adam Devine. The show filmed throughout the Charleston area and beyond, and they recently wrapped up the show. The series finale ended or aired, a couple of months back now. I don't think it's even been that long. But they did get 6 Emmy nominations, so congrats to them. It's all these so-called behind the scenes categories, so it's not for like acting. It's going to be things like cinematography, music supervision, stunt coordination, costumes, and sound editing. If you've ever seen the show, the acting is good. So I'm surprised there wasn't someone nominated. The writing is good, but really, the entire product is phenomenal. And if you've ever seen it, you know why those categories I just mentioned are the ones that the show has been nominated in. So congrats to them. There is one other tie. Stephen Colbert, who grew up on James Island, constantly talks about his Charleston ties on his, the late night show, or the late show rather. And when he's done interviews and things like that, he comes back and does events sometimes. His show did receive a nod for Outstanding Talk Series, so congrats to him and his entire team. Hopefully, both the Gemstones and Stephen Colbert's show will bring home some awards. Be nice to see, shows or people with ties to Charleston winning. So we'll see what happens. We'll have to wait a couple months, though. The 2025 Emmy Awards are going to air live on CBS on September 14th. So that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a moment, please rate, review, like, subscribe, whatever you can do on the platform you're listening to this podcast on. Please do so. It helps expand the reach and hopefully get some other people on board. If you're looking for plans, holycitycenter.com/calendar is where you need to go. I also want to say thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio, as well as a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I will be back with you next week. Have a great weekend. Already looking forward to being back with you, though, but let's not rush through the weekend. Until then, good night. Good luck.